Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Gary Gray, Director of Athletics at East Stroudsburg University. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in College Athletics, a Call to Action. Today's program is the third in a 12-part series that ESU Athletics will host between now and February 2022, with one speaker each month addressing the same topic, each in their own unique and personal way. We know we need to continue to make progress on diversity, equity, and inclusion in college athletics, and we look forward to hearing and discussing the ideas shared by each of our presenters. I also want to remind you that each speaker's presentation is archived on our athletics website. So if you want to listen to past ones, check that out. And certainly for those not able to attend today, Coach Avery's will also be archived. East Stroudsburg University is a diverse university where diversity, equity, and inclusion are highly valued. However, we all recognize much more can be done, not only locally, but also within our state, within our country, and even globally to improve our society in so many ways. In short, we know we can do better. To cause change, action must occur. To cause action, discussions must occur. Ideas must be shared, and commitments to change must be made. It is with this idea that we have created this speaker series. During today's presentation, you are invited to send in questions or comments by way of the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Those will go directly to Mr. Noah Strone, Coordinator of Athletic Operations at ESU. When our speaker has concluded his remarks, Noah will serve as our moderator by sharing those questions and thoughts you send in with our speaker, for his comments or responses. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nancy Jo Greenawalt, Professor, Associate Director of Athletics for Student Athlete Success and Senior Woman Administrator, to introduce today's speaker. Dr. Greenawalt.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. So it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, which is Miles Avery. Miles joined our staff in May of 2019 as ESU's first acrobatics and tumbling coach. He's had an impressive 25-year career, which did include a previous stint at ESU as part of our men's gymnastics team in the 1980s. And more recently, he had a 21-year stint at Ohio State University with their men's gymnastics team. He's a two-time recipient of the USA Gymnastics Coach of the Year Award. He served as an assistant coach to 4 U.S. men's Olympic gymnastic teams, and he was the personal coach for Paul Hamm, which in 2007 was the all-round gold medalist. So there's no doubt he's quite accomplished, but in 2017, that all came to fruition and him being inducted into the USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame. So quite an accomplished career, Miles, one to be very proud of for sure. But for today, Miles is here really to talk about his lived experience and how that has provided him with a unique lens on how he views the world and how he's experienced it. So it's really from that perspective that he will share his thoughts with us, and hopefully we'll be able to learn from one another. So Miles, it's all yours. You're on mute, Miles. Unmute.
There you go. No, I'm muting us all. But thank you, Dr. Bruno, for that introduction. And yeah, I think all of that leads to I'm old and I've been around a long time, but that means you experience a lot and you see changes, both good and bad. And it's from that perspective that I so appreciate ESU athletics and taking the time for, I think, such a serious subject, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and taking it seriously. And thank you specifically, Dr. Gray, for thinking of me when you needed someone to do this, to add my thoughts, opinions to this discourse. And just as Coach Kaba and Coach Fan, they told you a little bit about their upbringing and where they came from and things like that. And I want to share that with everyone as well. I grew up in the 1960s and 70s, really, really poor. And we lived in one of the worst inner city projects around. But my parents, they knew they had to get us out of there. And so they moved us to our own home, kind of, sort of. So they coupled with another family and both families moved to this one home, four bedrooms. There was a bedroom for boys, a bedroom for girls, and then the parents had the babies. But there were 12 children in this household. My family had 7, and the other family had 5. So again, if you didn't get in early, you were sleeping at the foot of the bed, or you were sleeping on the floor, or something like that. But obviously, growing up in the 60s and 70s in projects in the inner city wasn't a good place to raise children. And so our parents got together and they figured out a way to help us maneuver and give us everything that we needed to do to hopefully be successful. Growing up in a 2-parent household, certainly you are a minority in the inner city, and my family was able to, my family unit was able to stay together and still move forward. And again, as I mentioned, the first 2 speakers, and they came from faraway places, and some people could say exotic. Me, I was only an hour and a half away from East Stroudsburg, Philadelphia. That's where I grew up in Philadelphia, with all the gangs, violence, the over-policing, the apathetic attitudes, lots of poverty. As I said, probably very different from a lot of people on this call. But everyone learns and develops their own bias, and brings that to whatever they do in life. And obviously, some of those people are making decisions about who they're going to hire, who they're going to let in here in this group, who they're going to keep out, and all that's developed, through our life. And some people, going on into talking about policing, some people look at police and say, oh, well, they're just here to protect and serve, and we need more. And as I mentioned, in my community, I thought in my community was over-policed, and people were always getting arrested. And certainly, how could, why some people have this negative bias against police? Well, I'll tell you how a little 9-year-old boy growing up in the city could develop that bias. So I'm playing in the school. There was a schoolyard right across the street from where I grew up in Philadelphia. And it was a hot summer day. Everyone's outside, and it's at night. The street lights must not come on yet because I was still outside. But there was this ruckus, and we saw police on the corner, and then everyone ran to the corner to see what was going on, and the cops were chasing this guy, and he was jumping over all the banisters. We only lived in row homes, and so they were jumping over all the banisters, and they just couldn't catch him, and he got away. But and everyone's laughing, and so, but the police, what they did is they rounded up everyone that was standing around, put us in vans, and took us down to what's called the roundhouse in the city, and we stayed the night there. Here's a 9-year-old boy now, scared to death, doesn't have parents. He's in this holding cell at 9 years old, all for doing nothing, just standing around watching what's going on one summer night. So the next morning, they arraign us. And so they take us all to court, and we stand in front of the judge, and we hear what the police have said that we've done. And everyone's, it was so incredulous. Even so incredulous that even the judge didn't believe what the officers were saying we had done. And he just threw it out. So until that point, I would have never thought that a cop could lie or not even tell the truth. But from that point on, this 9-year-old boy now understood, yes, even cops can lie. And so you start to develop that bias. And obviously, again, you take things all throughout your life, and you go on. So that's how someone can develop that bias. As other people look at that, no, wait, all cops are good. Well, no, they're not. And as we're seeing, as we're going on and living this life, in my neighborhood, I was the first to graduate college in my whole neighborhood. My family was the first family to graduate everyone, even from high school. And so education, which I think is such a key to success and life, it wasn't very valued. And myself being the first in the whole neighborhood. And I was struck by how that part of my life, in terms of graduating from college, it served as the impetus for others that somebody, you can do it, and you can go to college. And even the drug dealers and people like that, they respected me for doing that and graduating college. And so my I gained that respect, and my family gained more respect, even from people. Now, I look at people, and I can talk to any person. I can be with a homeless person, doesn't matter whether you're the janitor or the president of the university, doesn't matter. I grew up, and everyone, you give everyone respect. It doesn't matter where they are in life. And certainly something that I would love to share with everyone. I think it's a good way to move forward. So I go on to college. I walk onto this gymnastics team, and I love it. In terms of sharing some of your culture with others, to move forward. I remember going to an NCAA championships, and only 5 of us qualified for my team. I was the only Black athlete to do that. So it was down at LSU. And so we go to this big buffet, and they have all kinds of food. And so I let my Southern roots, because my mom was from Greenville, North Carolina, and she made sure those Southern roots were in the home. So I introduced my teammates to grits. And I made sure that they ate them right, and it's not with sugar, it's with butter, salt, and pepper. That's how you eat grits. And so, I just recently, I thought of that story only because I just recently saw one of my teammates, and he remembered that, hey, I'm still eating grits, and so that was funny. But you can share some of yourself and your culture with others, and that's how we can move this discussion forward, sharing yourself. So I move on, and I go to I make the U.S. national team, and traveling throughout the world is super exciting. But talk about you going to other cultures. You really get an eye-opening and say, wow, we really had it. We're blessed to have been born in the USA, and we have this and we have that, and we don't have to fight with that. And we don't have bombs going off around us, and there's not war-torn. And we think we have poverty. I thought I lived in poverty until you see someone else who isn't even as fortunate as you. And so that part of seeing the world was certainly eye-opening to me, that there is always someone who isn't doing as well as you. And so that's part of what I bring to the table always. So I start coaching. I actually started coaching at Temple University. I was the assistant coach there. And then I came to ESU. And people see me in my life, and they say, oh, well, look, see, he accomplished so much. He must not have had any problems with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But, they wouldn't know how hard I've had to work to myself. I always thought I had to outwork everyone around me, because I knew the playing field wasn't level, and I wouldn't get all the chances everyone else did. So when there was a slim crack in the door, I had to make sure that I excelled, and I did it. I did better. As all my teammates from Temple would see that, wow, you certainly worked harder than, because they certainly were at a much higher level, because they got the opportunity to do gymnastics in private clubs. I did it in the streets of Philadelphia. That's how I learned any gymnastics, tell me, in the streets, risking my life. But I always thought I wanted to be a role model, and I knew that I was representing people way beyond just me. And I wanted to work hard, so I can give someone else that opportunity, like graduating college, like coaching, like being on a national team, that they can be successful, and it's through your work. And it can be done by anyone. It can be done by a Black man. It can be done by anyone. So I move on, and I become a coach at East Stroudsburg. And in 1984-85 season, East Stroudsburg gave me the opportunity to become the first Black head coach in the NCAA. Did you guys know that? That was way back in 1984. First Black men's head coach in the NCAA. And then I went on to OSU, and they did the same thing at Division I level. So I tell people, hey, I was both the first and the second Black head coach in the NCAA. One at Division II and one at Division I. But that is, something that, ESU and OSU, they didn't think that I couldn't do it. They didn't think that I couldn't run the whole thing. And I know, even as we stay in athletics and we look to the NFL, and how come there are only 2 Black head coaches in the NFL? Well, some would say, well, that's because the owners and the GMs, they don't feel like a Black man can do that. The black men, they can't run the whole thing. But, I'm thankful, I'm blessed that ESU just saw me as a coach, as a person. And they didn't even back then think of, oh, well, he can't do it. Of course he could. And they gave me the opportunity. And I'm so grateful that they did. They didn't think twice about it. and well, when when Ohio State thought twice about it for a little bit. When the opportunity opened, I was already an assistant coach, and the athletic director called out to Stanford University and said, "Hey, we have an opening for a head coach. What do you think?" And he was asking the athletic director there, and they said, "Well, you have Miles Avery right there. Why else would you look any further?" And they really didn't, and they just gave me that job, and I was able to do that. So then I go on, and coaching is real successful. I get to coach at my first Olympics in 1996. I have 2 Olympians, and then we move on to 2000, and then we get to 2004. And in 2004, I really, I had half the national team at Ohio State training, and things were really, really clicking. So I had the top 3 guys that were on the U.S. national team. So I had the top guys in the country at that time. Several other ones that were just on the national team, but doing considerably well. So in 2004, and this is going back to East Stroudsburg and Ohio State, saying this person is good, he can do this job. USA Gymnastics didn't think like that. I don't know that they still do, but in 2004, they changed their policies, even how they select coaches. I feel not to select me because I was a Black man. And people say, "Oh, no way, Miles." And so, I show them, look at all of the head coaches, and all blonde hair and blue eyes, no people of color. And so they get to 2004. And so until this time, the person who was had the most athletes on the national team, or had the top guys, they made him the head coach of a world championship team, or whatever team we were doing at the time. So now we're coming into the Olympics, and now they say, "Oh, no, we got to pick the coach earlier than the Olympics. We can't wait till the Olympics and then pick them." And so they actually chose a different person. And the phone call for USA Gymnastics telling me, "Hey, Miles, you just have to wait your time. And don't worry, you're doing great." Well, I knew I was doing great, but I had to wait my time. And the person that they chose, I said, "Well, why aren't you telling him to wait?" I had my first U.S. national team member when I was coaching at East Stroudsburg in 1986. His name was Kevin Ransom, my first national team member in 1986. I had my first 2 Olympians in 1996. And I coached world championships. I coached all these things up until 1996. And the guy they made the head coach, blonde hair, blue eyes, he hadn't had his first national team member until even 1998. And so I was well established before, and they're telling me, "Oh, you just have to wait your time." And so just very, very unfair. But that is, someone's with bias was in that room making that decision, and just said, "No, we can't have this person leading our Olympic team out there." But what happened is I had half the Olympic team. I had the alternate. So I had, all the Olympians came from my program, from me, but they didn't feel that I could lead that team. And that was that was my beginning of my end working with USA Gymnastics. And I still, am hurt by that they would not see that. And yeah, they put me in their Hall of Fame. And but what were people talking about? "Oh, Miles Avery, they didn't do this for him when they should have." And give me my due now, because I don't know what the future is going to bring. But in athletics, it's always been easier, I felt, for athletes to fit in. When I'm speaking to people, I tell them, and I tell families, there's no better way, I think, for a young man or a young woman to go to college than to be on a college team. And you have friends right away, you have coaches, you have administrators, you have people involved in your life for your success. And I always think that's my most important role, to getting them through college to the other side of whatever they're choosing to do. And so it is no better way in terms of feeling inclusion. People have their in groups and their out groups. That's a big one to be in terms of that athletics part. But that role of choosing those in groups and out groups, that can be, athletics. I think everyone can look at athletics, I think, and and learn from that. And how can athletics, take that into our community, our local community, our conference, NCAA, the government, society, as Dr. Gray said, globally, people can look at athletics to see how that is. Again, I come on any campus when I was an athlete, when I was a coach, and I feel welcome. I feel at home right away. Well, how can we bring that to our local community? And we have to spearhead that. How do we empower others to voice their own problems, their own solutions, their own ideas? We can help people do that. One of the ways in terms of this call to action that we can, I think, take our show on the road. Can we do something like this in another community and work with municipalities and counties, and can we do that to spearhead this conversation beyond college athletics? I think we can. I think we can. I'd love to do that. And so everyone brings again their bias and groups our bias. As an athletic director, professor, business owner, police administrator, and everyone's making those decisions. But everyone has to recognize that they can have these biases. Like I mentioned for police, if I'm on some committee and oh no, we can't, you have to just check yourself and know that they can and do exist, and just that they don't turn into prejudice. And as I mentioned, I really wanted to make sure that I was a great example. When I left East Stroudsburg in 1988, I went to South Africa for, I don't even know how long now, a month and a half or something. They were instituting gymnastics in their country. And when I was there, one of the places that people told me, oh, well, I don't know if you want to go to this place, it's called Wellington. And this was just at the end of apartheid. For younger people, look it up and read about it. But apartheid was just ending. But obviously the culture and the ideas, everything was still very, very prevalent in this country. But Wellington was overwhelmingly one of the most racist places in all of South Africa. And everyone was cautioning me, oh, Miles, we don't know if we want you to go there because of this. And but there was another side, another group of people saying, we absolutely want you to go there because we want people to see a difference. And we want you to be a change in how they think. And so I did go there, and they saw a Black man being articulate, being professional, being a teacher, one to educate. And these people hadn't seen this before. And that's why I went there. And to this day, some of my friends in South Africa, they obviously remember that. But I touched lives and I changed lives for them to think the only way for us to succeed, because this was for their children to be successful in gymnastics. And now you have a top USA coach coming over here, and wow, he's a Black man. And so now they think inclusion is a way to progress. And I'm so thankful that I was certainly part of that. And and I know that equity and inclusion isn't just a Black issue. It's so much more than that. My wife asked me a question. She says, how come in the NFL, in college, how come there are no coaches in a wheelchair? Would any owner, would any athletic director hire a head football coach that's in a wheelchair? In terms of inclusion, equity, again, it's beyond just a color thing. When you think about it, well, how come? Would Dr. Gray hire a head football coach in a wheelchair? I don't know. And I don't know that there's one that would apply for the job. But, if I got hurt, could I still be a head coach? I would hope so, because my mind is still doing what I'm doing. My energy hopefully will still be the same energy, and I could still do that. So I would hope, that could be, and athletics could always lead the way. Two of my daughters, they, everyone brings their own perspective, and my two daughters, who are certainly vocal about everything they do, but they're so different. I have one daughter that, her perspectives on diversity, equity, and inclusion is very different mind. She's so confrontational. And the other one is so passive and thought-provoking. And I want to get everyone to think and discuss. And they're just so different. And my one daughter, this past year, she organized at the time a Black Lives Matter protest. And some of my friends, oh, Black Lives Matter, and just it's such a trigger to say that. And so, but my daughter organized this, but she organized it and she knew the issues way better than I, but because she did all her research, but she included the police. The police was there. The police were there. We worked with the police, and in a where people saying defund the police and we hate the police. Well, that's not going to cure the problem. You got to work together, and maybe you can, rearrange some of those funds to do other things to help in hiring, help in the administrators, because it comes from the bosses, not just those people on the street, and those are the people that are bringing their biases. And how can we help that along? So how can ESU take it on? And as I said, how can we take it on the road and help that? How can we help people feel safe and that they're going to be heard? And what do they see in our speech? What do they see in our actions? And as we reach out to people, how can we know to let people know we hear them? We're here to help them as much as we can. So that's got to be our call to action. And you got to think and you got to do. You got to communicate and you got to do. What are we doing to really change our community? And again, athletics, I think, is encompassing. Most people in athletics, feel included right away. How can we make all the students at ESU feel included right away? I've talked to some students who don't feel a part of it, and certainly, hopefully, I've done my job in helping them do that. And no, you want to stay here. This is why you want to stay here. And that's athletics. Athletics, I think, is so diverse and it is so inclusive. And that magic that we have, that is, I think we are the people to lead this, to say other places can be just like we are, and helping each other doing that. Things to roadblocks and obstacles are in the way, but I think through conversation, through communication, through that nurturing relationships, that is how we can change people's hearts and people's minds and how they're thinking and what their actions are, and you can't be afraid to get in there. I'll give you one last example of something that, a friend of mine, I've known him for over 40 years, Bruno. He was a coach, obviously, at Stroudsburg, and here's a man who, when he just met me, he liked me. This real German, he didn't speak English really well, but here he is, brought me into his home, his family, brought me to Stroudsburg. I lived in his home with his two young children, and he just trusted this inner city kid from Philadelphia. I see in his heart, and that's what I see. And so fast forward till last year, 2020. So I met Bruno in 1976. Now, we've been friends, he and his wife and his children, all this time. Here we are in 2020. And he had renovated this one house that he has. And I just went over there with someone else because they had to check on something. No one had been in it for a year. So we go in there, and all of the artwork is about the Confederate Army and these Confederate flags and all this and that in the home. And Bruno just saw this somewhere, thought it was neat, and brought it. And I'm going to outfit this whole house with Confederacy things. And so, and that hurt me. And so instead of just I'm not going to say anything because we've been friends for this long. No, it's exactly because we've been friends for this long that I am going to bring this up. I'm going to tell him how I feel. I'm going to tell him and his wife Cheryl how this made me feel. And hey, we had a meeting. We sat down in their living room, and the whole family, we got together. And I know, because they value me and I value them, they know, and that's why I could share this with them. And that conversation led to understanding both our perspectives, and I knew their heart. But now they understood mine a little better. And what was the action of that? They said, okay, we can do this over. You know, we didn't know that. And they took all of that out. I don't know what they did with it, but they took it all out and they redressed the house with other things that I think and generally aren't going to elicit, you know, those types of emotions from people. It just wasn't necessary, but they listened and they acted. And that's what we have to do. We have to converse with this discourse. We have to listen. And then we, athletics, have to call ourselves to action to then act. And that's what I got. And I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Miles. I know Noah's compiling a few questions there that have been coming in, and while he does that, I want to start it off with one and maybe a follow-up. Do you think that there's something about athletics and the world of sport and competition that makes us a good vehicle to be good examples of non-discrimination? Because what we do, what we value is performance. We value results. We keep score. We measure time. We measure distances, right? It's competition. And maybe with the exception of your sport, you know, that's where there's judging, and maybe that's a harder one. But you know what I'm saying? And I know that's politically, there's all kinds of historical politics involved in judging gymnastics, of course, from the Olympics, but most of what we do is very measurable. Does that make athletics a really good vehicle maybe to open doors and where people are evaluated on performance results? You know what I mean? Or is that not the case?
Well, and again, I look at athletics and I think the reason why athletics, and it's some of that because everyone that's on that team, you have a common goal. I think the coaches are going to, they're going to communicate what the goal is, and they are going to put pieces in place to help them do that. Recruiting, you want people that are going to help you do that. And it doesn't matter. And that's why diversity is so important. Right. That it doesn't matter if you're going to help me win. I want to win. And so you're going to help me do that. For me, yeah, I don't want to have to worry about you academically, but if you're going to be able to do this and add to the team, I don't care what you look like. One of the things I thought Ohio State was ahead of the curve on diversity, inclusion, equity, is when I got there, I had to present them a plan for recruiting diversity to my team. And then I said, well, just look at my team. they were quite diverse at the time. But they wanted every program to have a plan. And I want to see it. Are you going into the inner cities? Are you really seeking out diversity for your program? And to this day, I really think, and again, that was 1980, 88, 89. And they were thinking about that then, that we have to make our athletics program diverse. And we need to make sure that there is a plan to do that, because anything, it takes a plan. And what athletics can do to say, yeah, we are a good model, you have to have a common goal out there. What is the common goal? Is it to make everyone feel like they are a part of the community and their voice can be heard? They can be on the team. How can athletics help that? And we can be a model. When I'm adding pieces to the team, it's all for one common goal. When Jim Williker is adding pieces it's all for one common goal. And so that diversity matters a whole lot in terms of, hey, who can help me win? That's who I want.
Yeah. Thank you. And my follow-up is this, if that's the case, and I think we all agree, we have the common goal, we keep score, we want to win, we want to win championships. How can we then in the world of athletics be the example, maybe in the world of business or in other areas, because they have common goals. They want to win in their areas. Corporations want to make money. They want to pay shareholders. Nonprofits want to raise money and implement their programs, just down the line. So is there anything that you think is kind of the key within the world of athletics where we can, and as we grow and do better, also they'll be the example to business and education or any other industry?
Well, certainly accountability. who's looking and who's holding those who are in those decision-making positions accountable, when you fall short of inclusion, who is holding it? And is someone really saying, I'm going to hold you accountable? And athletics, in terms of that model, it doesn't matter. As an athletic director, you're going to hold me accountable that my team is going in the right direction. And so I am going to be held accountable. Businesses obviously are held accountable a lot of times to that bottom line. And certainly if I own IBM, it's not going to matter to me who's doing that job. I want you to make sure that the workforce looks like society. It should. But if I'm in a position that I don't care about that, and everyone is blonde hair and blue eyes, then again, we're not affecting change. We have to make sure that people in those decision-making positions are thinking DE&I.
Thank you. All right, Noah, I think you might have some there.
Sure do. We got a couple here coming in. First of all, Miles, from your first stint here at ESU, which was, as you said, quite a few years ago, to your stint now, how have you seen that the university has changed, especially in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, I will say, I thought it was diverse then. I think it is more multicultural diverse, and even international students. On the gymnastics team back in the day, we had a lot of Brazilians on the gymnastics team, and bringing that international diversity to campus. But I think, as a total campus, in terms of all the students, not just in athletics, I think it is more diverse in that realm in terms of the international flavor that's here at East Stroudsburg. I certainly have seen that. That seems to me be a change on campus.
So with those changes, what do you still see that needs to be improved at ESU to become even more inclusive and welcoming? Well,
certainly, yeah, welcoming. Once those students are here, whether it's in terms of diversity of any student, I think we have to make sure that we have people in place. It's different in athletics because those athletes, athletes are going to have people in place. They're going to have coaches, administrators. They're going to have people involved in their success. If I'm just a typical student from New York City, from the Bronx or somewhere like that, how am I going to feel included right away? And as a community, as a campus, we have to reach out and make sure that that student knows these are places, these are people, these are individuals that are entrusted in your success. That starts at like student affairs or someone like that, making sure they're reaching out to the students and know where they can go to talk to someone. They can go somewhere to feel included, to be a part of, really be welcoming, and really making sure that that infrastructure for help for any student is known to those students. Now you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink, but you've got to make sure they know the water's there. And that's what I think as a campus that we have to do, and make sure we're doing it. Not just putting it out there and then hoping it comes. Make sure it's happening.
So as a follow-up to that, then, as one of our questions here, how do you see that ESU, as well as other institutions of higher education, continue to make that commitment to inclusion, especially in intercollegiate athletics?
Well, certainly something like this. I think this is phenomenal. It's not just a Black History Month, February, and we're done with it. And we'll wait till next February to do something to create a continual dialogue that people can listen to and people can learn from. I think that's certainly a start. Could this be at a university level? Could we get President Law involved or someone, in terms of, this, and obviously, I see things about workshops and things all the time, knowing that the ESU community really cares. It really is important. And we want you to know we're going to not just give it lip service, but we're working toward this is what we want. Tell us your thoughts and your feelings, and reaching out to different people, even in this 12-part series, I think is important to the discourse of DE and I, that you're taking in others' opinions and perspectives, and we can put that all together to really help move ESU athletics, ESU as a whole forward.
Thank you. So we have another question here about, it's one thing to recruit a diversified team, right? But what strategies do you have as a coach to make sure those individuals, once they're here, you talked a little bit about it, feel included? Like you've now recruited those diverse individuals, but how do you mesh them all together as one team?
And teams always, obviously, people don't have to be the best of friends. It starts with respect. Everyone will respect each other, obviously sharing and communicating those common goals, and hopefully everyone there is certainly for those common goals. Partnering up, a senior doesn't, in terms of, it doesn't matter, senior with a freshman, so that they kind of learn the ropes and they learn what that team is all about. But the diversity in the team, obviously hazing, no, there's no hazing. There's no, you come in and things like that. So everyone feels welcome because you've got 12, 15 sisters or brothers or right there. And as a head coach, obviously, you have to make sure that that is happening and that the team is working together toward everything. Yeah, you pull up your captains, you talk to your captains, you talk to your team, and they got to know it from you once they get there, that they're welcomed into the family. And everyone is everyone here. We have one goal. We want to get there and we want to win. So that communication from you as a head coach is the number one thing that I feel in making any student feeling welcome to your team and welcome to the university.
Thank you. So obviously you were on the Olympic staff for quite a few Olympic Games. Was there any certain city or country that, didn't necessarily treat you with respect or made you feel uncomfortable during any situations while you were in those Olympic Games?
I don't think so, like in the Olympics, because you're in such a bubble. You're so focused on the task at hand and doing your best at the Olympics. I really, almost opposite, in the Sydney Olympics of 2000, it didn't matter. And we drove to see the country so much. It's like the country said, hey, we're going to have a ton of visitors in the country. Everyone be nice to everyone you see, all the visitors. And everyone just seemed overwhelmingly nice in that country. And that was something very memorable about that Sydney Olympics. When I was an athlete traveling, sometimes it was a lonely feeling, sometimes thinking that, wow, am I the only Black person in this whole country? I mean, you would go to some countries and you never see anyone that looks like you. Obviously in China and Japan, and wow, am I the only one in this country? And I would think things like that being in some countries, as an athlete, as a U.S. athlete. As a coach, we always had athletes on the team, we had other coaches and things like that. So that felt a little different as a coach, and just not at the Olympics. Again, you're in that little bubble and you're so focused on the competition, and until you're out in that country, you really don't interact with too many other people. But I never felt anything like that.
So obviously we talk a lot about DEI when it relates to, let's say, race or ethnicity, but it also relates to gender. So you have a specific unique quality where you coach men for such a long time. What has the transition been like for you moving over and to the women's side? And I know you have your own private gym and stuff like that, so you've been able to train athletes of both genders, but especially at the intercollegiate athletic level.
Certainly, it has been a different, and there is a difference in coaching, 19, 20-year-old men to 19 and 20-year-old women. I think I really I stress and lean on my assistant a lot yeah, I'm not a female, and I want to make sure that I'm sensitive to things that I need to be. I talk to, so I seek out much more advice. I think coaching adult women as I did been coaching adult men. That's been I think the biggest thing for me. I think I want to push them as hard as men because you want to get the same results. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. You're not cheating them, from success because of that. So the biggest thing is me seeking out advice from others. That's the biggest change that I've seen that I've had to take part of. Was there something else to that?
No, that was the question. It's how you find advice to kind of make sure that you're inclusive and all of that stuff. So that's great. But so you talked about your upbringing and growing up in the inner city of Philadelphia. How did that, especially in that area, get you into a sport like gymnastics? It's not exactly a sport that inner city kids have the access to.
Oh yeah. It isn't. And I grew up playing the more traditional male sports: football, basketball, baseball. Those are my sports. In high school, actually, my best sport was gymnastics. I'm sorry, track. The first time I ever saw gymnastics, I was 11 or 12 years old in junior high, and they cut the team, so I didn't have an opportunity to do it then. But it intrigued me. I saw this guy just flipping, and we're still friends to this day. His name is Wesley Southall, still lives in Philadelphia. But he, I said, wow, I thought that was so cool, and I likened it to martial arts. You can do all this flipping, then you could kick somebody, you could do something, and so that's how I saw it. But I just thought it was it just intrigued me. And then when I got to high school, in between two sports, I got the opportunity to do a little bit of gymnastics. So for high school, I did a total of 9 months worth of gymnastics. And so I wasn't any good. I was just a beginner. But again, it just always intrigued me. And then when I got to Temple University, I was just walking past the gym and, oh, wow, they have gymnastics here. And it's so cool. I really like this sport. And I walked into the gym and basically never left and fell in love with it. Obviously now in college, but I walked on the team, just a beginner. And I had a coach who poured so much into me that I actually got good at it. And then I made the U.S. national team and went to Olympic trials and all those things from just being interested in it. It looked so cool. And then what I really liked about it, once I got into it, is that, wow, these are like 6 different sports, and it's so different. No one else can do this, and that's some of the gymnastics. And I thought, well, people can shoot a basketball or catch a football or hit a baseball, but people can't do this. And so that also intrigued me about this sport, that it was so different than the other sports that I knew of that everyone else could do.
That's your history is amazing. That is for sure. So, I have a question as well in regards to, gymnastics, unfortunately, has gotten a black eye in a lot of recent years in some different other ways. And acrobatics and tumbling obviously relates very well to gymnastics. But in the last Olympics in 2016, obviously we haven't had this year's or last year's Olympics due to COVID. There was actually a lot of praise for U.S. gymnastics being the most diverse team out there, with whether it's race, gender, ethnicity, or even religion. How do you see that has changed over the years within the gymnastics community? I'll use gymnastics because acro obviously relates very closely.
Well, and I have seen that, and gymnastics historically, socially, economically, it's been very hard. And until that upward tick of economics, it's such an expensive sport. So, my family in inner city could never have afforded me to do gymnastics. If I really found it and found a local gymnastics club, no way my family could afford me to go to a club. But as through education and people getting better jobs and working, now you can see the landscape changing that, wow, almost anyone can afford it and can put their children in it. And that's how the landscape, as you see, you look at older Olympic teams, and everyone really does look the same. You look at 2016, and it is diverse. You have Asian Americans, you have African Americans, you have anybody that is good enough making it. And that was different in the 60s and 70s as you look at different Olympic teams. And so USA Gymnastics, yeah, that's certainly something that they can put up there and say, oh, well, it's good. However, it wasn't anything that I think USA Gymnastics did to make that happen. It was just society changing that made that happen, that made that door open for other individuals just by socioeconomic things changing over the years.
If you don't mind, Noah, may I jump in with the last question? We can wrap up.
Sure.
Good. So Miles, you mentioned a couple times used the phrase, maybe we could take it on the road. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? What was the idea? I think I had a handle on your idea there, but I'd like to pursue that a little bit. What do you think we can now do in terms of taking it on the road?
Like, can ESU athletics do kind of almost community town halls? And obviously we can have people from all different, obviously, sports and things like that, talking to people on the road and showing the diversity that we have and how inclusive that we can be, and how can we help that you in your community get to where we are.
Good point. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's great. Really something to think about. That's a really good prospect. Well, Noah, we're out of time, so if you don't mind, I'll wrap it up. Coach Avery, thank you very much. We really appreciate you sharing your thoughts, your backgrounds, your experiences, and on this very important topic. You did an outstanding job. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for answering the questions and joining in this discussion that we've had for this past hour, those we've received from the webinar viewers and then those from us as well. Noah, Dr. Greenewald, thank you for being part of today's program and helping put this together. And finally, thank you, everybody, for joining us today to be part of this ESU Athletic Speaker Series. We hope to see you all again next month. We plan to announce our new speaker. We actually have June and July lined up. Announce our next speaker very shortly and the time and date. And we thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. Again, remember, all episodes are archived on our website. We hope you'll share those with other people out there on social media. And we really appreciate your viewing today. Thank you and good day.